Thank you, Erica. Thank you to the Nomadic Network for having me. Thank you, everybody, for showing up today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So I do preface this by saying that this is my first talk of this type for the Nomadic Network or Wonderful. So bear with me as I get some of my bearings. All of that being said, I've been working on this kind of work for over 20 years in my career. I promise you I'm well qualified to present on this topic. But this is the first time I've done this run through. So how to optimize your website for SEO beyond keywords. Everybody knows how important keyword research is to ranking for your site. Not everybody knows that there are tons of ways graphically and functionally that you can optimize your website beyond keywords. So when we're done here, you're going to know a little bit more about me, how to suss out page functionality gremlins, like where those guys are hiding in your site, how to create a mobile first site experience, how to properly optimize your images and your graphics, how to incorporate intuitive user interface or UI and user experience, UX. You're going to learn a little bit about how to implement accessible site features. And I'm going to give you at the end a slide specifically to screenshot all of these resources that we're going through. So I'll show them to you. I'll show you how I'm using them as we go through. And then at the end, I will have a slide with the exact URLs written out so you can just screenshot it. Does that work for everyone? All right, let's do this. So about me, everyone knows I am a travel lover, anyone who knows me. So I'm Jordan. I live to help people travel deeper. I am all about off the beaten path travel. I'm a third culture kid. I'm based outside of DC in College Park, Maryland, right on the border. Flash packing road tripper, 53 countries, and literally in 2 weeks, it's going to be 55. All 50 states, drink in hand. I love testing out local libations. You guys might know me from the TNN network or the Nomadic network and prior chats. I've spoken at the Travel and Adventure Show. I'm also the wonderful membership director and its DC chapter director. So I'm in the travel industry quite a lot. You can follow me on my blog or pretty much anywhere at Global Debauchery. And if you subscribe to my newsletter, you can get some travel inspo, fun discounts, and there's one big one at the end that I'll tell you guys about as well. All of that aside, I'm also actually an award-winning designer and creative director. So I went to Rochester Institute of Technology for Design, which is a big name school for that particular field. Started out as a designer in advertising and worked my way up to creative director over more than 20 years. I've worked with a lot of different clients, MasterCard, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Penn State, University of Maryland. And the later part of my career as creative director, I was actually helping build multi-million-dollar websites and brands for these names. So you can take a look at my portfolio at jordan-campbell.com. That's Campbell with a P, a lot of people forget. And just a disclaimer, as is the case with many blogs and portfolio sites, it needs to be updated. I spend a lot of my time freelancing for others. So in this particular talk, do as I say, not as I do. So just a helpful tip there. I do my best. So one really important thing to think about your website, your blog, whatever digital platform it is that you're working on is that bad design shouts at you. Everyone knows a bad design when you see one. Good design is the silent seller. The reason this matters so much, the reason why you should care about your functionality and the way your site looks is because ultimately it's the ease with which people make your way around your site. And if that is difficult for them, they are going to leave you in a hot second for another site that can deliver exactly that. So if you've got great content and you're competing with somebody with great content, the difference as to whether they pick you over this other person is going to be your site design. It is really imperative. All right, and we're going to play a game. I want to see everybody's hands. Everyone who's online, put 10 fingers up. Hands, 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 hands. Okay, so we're going to play put a virtual finger down if. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, and if you don't know the answer, just go ahead and put that finger on down. Just go ahead and do it. So put a finger down if you have never run an audit on your site. a site audit. Put a finger down if in WordPress, you still have classic pages somewhere in the depths of your classic, in the depths of your site. Put a finger down if you don't know what a responsive template is. Put a finger down if you have no idea what a first paint is. Put a finger down if you upload photos and don't optimize them. Put a finger down if you don't even know the number of plugins you have installed on your site. Put a finger down if you ignore your file titles on upload. Put one down if you don't know the difference between captions, descriptions, and alt tags. Put another one down if you use H3s or H4s instead of H1s and H2s because you think they look nicer. Put a finger down if you're not familiar with WCAG or 508 compliance. Okay, so now in the chat, I want to hear everybody's results. I am really interested in seeing what kinds of results we get. I can't see the chat myself at the moment, so I'm just going to have to go off of what I'm being told. So, but
it's a lot of 4s and 3s.
So, but that's okay. That's why we're here today, right? So I'm going to give you the answers to all of this stuff and tell you how to improve all of this stuff. So do not despair. Jordan is here to help save your website and your day. Okay, so these are some things for your consideration. So in May 2020, now 2 years ago, which seems super crazy, right? Google announced page experience signal is what they're calling it, was going to be a ranking factor in SEO. And it officially rolled out this time last year. So if you haven't made these updates, you're already behind the ball. Page experience is a set of signals, and we'll go through all of this. Like I'll put this in English, like in layman's terms for everybody as we go through. But basically it measures user experience beyond just the content, the value of the content that you provide. And it does it by breaking it into mobile and desktop. It includes core web vitals, which is a specific set of items that we'll run through, load performance, interactivity, visual stability. It also includes being responsive, HTTPS, having a secure site, and intrusive interstitial guidelines. And we'll talk about what that is because it's a super fancy term that is, I think just makes developers feel smart in using it. So at the end of the day, Google still ranks based on content, based on your overall value that you're providing. But if you are neck and neck with somebody in terms of content, this is actually going to be, these items are actually going to be what gets you ahead in the game. So we're talking about web vitals, right? Like, what does that even mean? Where is my site? How can I even tell what my web vitals are? So let's just do a level set, and you can do this on your own desktop as we go. So I'm going to give you a couple of different resources for web vitals, and we'll actually walk through where they are, and I'll show them to you. So you can find web vitals on your Google Search Console. So, and this is one of those do as I say, not as I do. I have not posted a blog in a while, so I actually don't have enough usage data to pull it up, but I wanted to show everybody where it was. So you pull open your Google Search Console. You can only use this for your verified site through Google Analytics, right? So you go into Google Analytics, you say, this is my site, you verify it. So, and it is actually just here in the left-hand sidebar, Core Web Vitals. The benefit is if you're like me and don't have an awful lot of traffic to pull from recently, is that it literally says right here, try page speed insights. That's my second one. So I decided as a fun little game, we're going to use Nomadic Matt's site as the example. So you can literally, page speed insights is open to everybody. You can just go in and you can check any sites too. It doesn't have to be your own. It doesn't have to be verified. So you can see on mobile here, hey, Matt's passed, right? Yay, Matt. You'll see some more information down here. We'll dive into this stuff, what it even means. You can also see on desktop as well, overall passed. So you can go to Page Speed Insight, and there is a URL that I think Erica can pop into the chat, and just see where you sit, just see where your website levels out at. Another tool, me personally, I love Ubersuggest. and I will walk you through that. And the reason being is because there's so many more resources than just keywords on here. However, they have in Ubersuggest a full site audit as well. So I ran Nomadic Matt through the SEO site audit here. It gives you all the information. Some of the best stuff I like about this, and again, we can circle back to this, is SEO issues discovered. So it actually breaks out the different issues, how many instances there are of it, and how to fix it. So that's the big one is, and it ranks them. What are the most crucial ones that you need to fix right away? What are the ones that can wait? What are the ones, and it dives deep. So other ones that you guys can find that I know a lot of people are familiar with and probably already have accounts, so it's definitely worth including them. SEMrush, Moz, Site Improve. A lot of folks may or may not know Site Improve. It's more of a developer's tool, but it is really, really, really in-depth, and it focuses specifically on this, on how your website is functioning. Whereas SEMrush and Moz do a little bit of everything, so it's not as in-depth. So take your, pick your poison, take your pick. Did anyone run their site through PageSpeed Insights while we were doing that? And if so, were you surprised by your results? What are they looking at? What are they looking like? Okay, so now we're gonna go through these vitals. Okay, these are the core vitals that Google describes, and I've got it broken into the top section is one bulk, and the bottom section is sort of their secondary, their second level items that they look for. So the first one is load times, and literally that is how much time to your first paint, and what your first paint is literally a single pixel loading on your site. And then they say your first contentful paint is where meaningful elements on your site start loading. So like text. So your load time is one of the biggest factors. And I'll tell you why in a couple of slides as well. Interactivity, how long it takes for all of your interactive elements to load. Visual stability. So have any of you guys ever gone to a site, particularly on mobile, where you're trying to click on something and things keep shifting because ads keep loading or pop-ups keep loading? That's visual instability. That's what, and what we want is visual stability. We want attributes loading on the page that load quickly and are stable and user-friendly. They're looking for, and this is the second level. So those are the three top things. This is the second level, mobile first. Well, I say mobile friendly. In the design world, everyone is designing for mobile first. In other words, they're no longer designing to desktops, they're designing for phones and tablets, and then designing from desktops to then designing to desktops from there. So we like to refer to it as mobile first. A huge contingent of people, I mean, I think it's like over 50% are viewing information like ours on mobile devices, not as much on desktops anymore. Having a secure HTTP. This is an easy one, and we'll go through that. And the sixth item is obnoxious pop-ups. So that can be your pop-ups, it can be ads, it can be on mobile, it can be on desktop. And I'm sure you guys have run into it where on your phone, you've gotten a pop-up and you can't close it out or access the content around it. So that's exactly what they're referring to. So here's the thing with design. You cannot understand good design if you don't understand people. So design is made for people. It's about how your users use what you put out there. And if you don't understand how people are using pages and sites and websites, then you're going to have an awfully hard time creating a really good page experience for users on your site, right? Makes sense. Okay, so here we go. This is where we're here to help. How do I improve my overall site performance? And what I've done is I've taken those 6 attributes that we just talked about, and I've kind of shifted the order of them a little bit with some solutions that we'll dive into. The reason I've shifted the order is because in terms of workflow, me personally, I find it easier to move through these 6 items in this order. not necessarily their priorities. So one of the 6 was having a secure HTTP, right? So I put that as an easy win. If you do not have an HTTPS, do it right away. It is an easy win. It doesn't take long. I set mine up a really long time ago. And I believe I did it. You can do it directly through your host. You just request a certificate, and then you have the certificate code entered into your website. I should also mention, just as a heads up, I'm on WordPress. So a lot of the stuff that I'm going to refer to, I'm on WordPress.com, not .org. So a lot of the stuff I'm going to refer to is WordPress based. But if you're on Wix, if you're on Squarespace, all of these same principles apply. And I actually provided, I don't know if you can drop that in the chat, Erica, there's actually a really easy infographic that I have in the mix that just shows you how to go from HTTP to HTTPS. Just some pitfalls with that, just a heads up. When you make that move, Google views it as a URL change. So you're going to see a drop in traffic for a time being until everything readjusts and recrawls, right? The other thing is that you're going to want to enter your HTTPS into your Google console to get it crawled. So your HTTP is already in there, but it's basically viewing it as 2 separate sites. So you're going to want to make sure that you specifically enter your secured site. And for folks who actually may not know the difference, I'm just taking a step back here. HTTPS is secure. So any information that is sent through your site is officially secure. And you can tell when you go to pages, because the S will load automatically, even if somebody just puts nomadicmat.com. You'll see whether it's secure or not. This is a big deal for email information. And it's a big deal, especially for shopping sites, anywhere where credit cards are going to be moved through. All right. So with that, ensure your site is mobile friendly or mobile first. There are a lot of different ways that you can do this, and we'll talk about that. If you don't know, an easy way to tell would be to take your desktop browser window and just size it down and see if your page elements shift, right? If they don't, then you've got a locked page scale. And that means that if you pull it up on your phone, you might have one of those really wide sites that you have to pan around, as opposed to the elements collapsing for your phone. The good news is, so with all of this confusion and this crazy lingo, is that load times, interactivity, and visual stability, those top 3 items we talked about, can all be improved with some of the same basic principles. So if you improve one, you will sort of inevitably be improving the others at the same time. Reduce your ads, reduce your pop-ups, make sure it's user-friendly above all. So it's great to monetize your site, but do not be one of those sites that has 1,000 ads everywhere all over the place, because I assure you, you're not going to make more money that way. And we'll talk about that why later. You're going to want to check your site structure, your navigation, your hierarchy, also a deep dive. And you can improve your site's accessibility. So, and that's great for SEO, but also just great for your readers. Okay, so deep diving, mobile first, mobile friendly, responsive site design. You're going to want to make sure that your site is responsive. In other words, that it is built not just for desktop, but for tablet and phones. Even going deeper into that, it's built for all different types of phone widths, all different kinds of browser widths, all different kinds of devices. And a really easy way to do this, of course, is to go through your template on WordPress or Squarespace and just choose responsive. Make sure that your template that you selected is a responsive template. There are also some features like AMP, accelerated mobile, I forgot what the P stands for, but basically it simplifies everything in your site and sort of like snaps it down to being more mobile friendly. The downside is that if you go to your own site on a mobile device, a lot of the nice, fresh design elements are like stripped out of it. And that's kind of the purpose. So it's not pretty, but it's an easy solution. I'm sorry about my cat meowing in the background, by the way. She's hungry. She's 18 and she's hungry, so she just yells at me. I just gave her her food bowl. Um, so another one, if you're in WordPress, so the old editor was the classic editor, and they made this big shift. A lot of people hated it, took a lot of getting used to. Now they have what they call co-blocks. Co-blocks are specifically designed to be responsive, so to work with mobile devices, to automatically size. If you have old, I have some in the depths of my blog. If you do have them, change them to co-blocks. This is helpful. It's also easier to edit moving forward as well, because trying to edit old pages now is really difficult with updated systems. Another tip is for responsive design. This is why you see nowadays, so you're going to want to have what they call stackable elements, right? Like circles, 3 circles side by side on desktop, they just stack on mobile, or testimonials that might be side by side that just collapse and stack. So those are stackable elements. And what they call them in design is reusable snippets. So you have the same one, like a testimonial block, is it called a reusable snippet, or widgets. A lot of people refer to them as widgets as well. Another, and one of the big things I think that a lot of people have a hard time adjusting to, is avoiding defined widths. So for example, if you have a table or a video that you're importing onto your page, you don't want it to have a set width in the code anywhere or through your CMS. Because what happens is when it moves to mobile, it's extra wide, right? And that's not mobile friendly. So you want to have it set to where it flexes with your layouts. Along with avoiding defined widths, avoid in your text hard returns or soft returns. This is to allow your text just to flow naturally, and you won't have any weird breaks, right? Sometimes people like to do hard and soft returns in the text because it looks prettier. But it's actually a bad idea, because it doesn't matter how it looks on your single device at this time, at this width, because there's a bajillion other people out there where it's going to be shifting all over the place. So that's one of those, just live with it. Okay, so here's where we're talking about the first paint. So again, just a reminder, first paint is literally the time it takes for a single pixel to load on your site. Your first contentful paint, and we'll go and take a look at that as well, is where anything meaningful actually eventually shows up on your site. So your first block of text, how long does that take? This is one of the big things, are load times. It's where load times come into play, and all of your interactivity. So this is how you can improve your first paint graphically, specific with graphics. So you can do it through image dimensions. So do not upload images at the same dimensions they were taken. In other words, do not take an image that's on your phone, that's, 4K, high def, 300 DPI, and just like upload it into your CMS system. Do not do that. They are massive file sizes, and to boot, sometimes what'll happen is if they are reduced and compressed too quickly by the CMS, which it does automatically, you'll get what they call artifacts. So it'll look like it's got almost like bubbles over it or little pixels over it. So if you're uploading inappropriate image dimensions, you're going to get all of this crazy stuff happening. What you do want to do is you want to find your template specs. So they will tell you, the image size for this kind of page in your template specs is this wide. And you're going to want to size it appropriately to that. Usually for most sites, it's around a 1200 pixel width max. So image quality, do not upload images without checking and modifying your quality. So this is where you might upload an image, an original image, and you're uploading a 5 meg file. So all of those 5 megs have to be downloaded on your site. This is really, really heavy data to download to get to that first paint, right? And that's one of the top ranking SEO factors for UX from Google. What you want to do is you want to reduce both your DPI, which is dots per inch. So it's how much information is in each little pixel of your image. That's what that is. You're going to reduce both appropriately. So we have Retina displays now. So 96 DPI is great for Retina. 72 is standard. for anything digital. And actually with the quality, so you know how when you go to save out, it'll be like, do you want to save it at max quality or do you want to reduce it? It has the little slider, right? It also happens if you save for web in Photoshop, you'll also get a quality slider. You can actually basically reduce your images to about 30% quality without any noticeable difference to the naked eye. So you can get your file sizes down that way as well. So image file sizes. So after you've done those two things, your image file size should be way down from your original image. Don't just upload them willy-nilly. Make sure you're checking this. A general rule of thumb is for smaller images or like standard page images that you might flow text around is to try to get those around 100 kilobytes. I say around 250 kilobytes for hero images, which are the big ones that display at the top of all of your pages, right? A lot of people might argue with me and say you should still try to hit 100 kilobytes with those. But as somebody who likes to do a lot of photography and whose site is really based on a lot of imagery, I just try to keep it as low as possible. Bonuses here. File types worth using, JPEGs, PNGs. The latest type of file type are called next gen file types. These are JPEG 2000s, JPEG XRs, WebPs. WebPs are actually the most effective file type to use right now because of the compression on all three of these. So they compress everything, bring things way down. They're relatively new. Well, they're new-ish. And I think they're really just starting to sort of take off with a lot of people in design. Also, another bonus is a lot of people are in Lightroom. However, if you are a Photoshop user, instead of just saving a JPEG, there is a save for web feature where you can toggle all of these settings on your own. Okay, so improving your first paint via code. And I will actually show you guys how this relates back to your consoles and your page site, your page speed insights. So this is via code. And just so you know, you do not have to know code or be on the back end to be able to do a lot of these things. These are things that you can do yourself through your content management system. Do not install 1,000 plugins and do not leave useless plugins active. Install only what you need and then delete any inactive plugins. This also helps reduce load times, right? And actually more code, even though it's just a bunch of letters on the back end, contributes to more memory that has to load to get to that first paint. Extra code. A lot of people love animation galore, JavaScript, or like icons that sort of animate and have like ambient sort of features that look pretty cool. They are really cool. But JavaScript is sort of notorious for having huge file sizes and being very data heavy. So I would just say incorporate it thoughtfully. Like I said, a lot of times it looks cool, but it's going to hurt you with Google if you're doing it too much. Ads and pop-ups. Do not think you're getting more money and subscribers with more ads and more pop-ups. You need to put the user first. And the reason you're not getting more money or subscribers is that because people are not going to stick around for all of that stuff. And they're not coming back either after that happens. They're going to be like, this site is my worst nightmare. I'm going somewhere else. Bye. And just to put things in perspective, this is why do I care about this backend stuff that nobody can see? Because the average user waits 3 seconds for a page to load. That is how quickly they expect a page to load. When you have all this extra stuff, it is no bueno. And actually, I think we'll take a quick minute to go, let's see, to go back over here to the page speed insights for Nomadic Mat, and we can put some of this stuff into perspective and see what all this means. So you can see the largest contentful paint, right, that we talked about here, cumulative shift layout, so or cumulative layout shift. So that's where the visual stability comes into play. Your first contentful paint, right? Time to first byte. And you can see diagnosing performance issues. First contentful paint, 1 second. And it gives you like very easy, like, look at the cumulative shift layout. That's pretty good. I mean, and to put things in perspective, in order to get a green light on page speed insights, it's 90 to 100. So that's a pretty high bar to hit. So, and it also walks you through opportunities, like how can you fix this stuff? So you can see right here, reduce unused JavaScript. This is what I was talking about with animations and fun and cool features and adding some of these plugins, enable text compression, impact of third-party code. So this is all of this, let's see. This is, sorry, apologies. So this is all of this stuff, this random code that you put into your site. And that's how it affects it. That's where those numbers come into play. Hoping that makes sense to everybody. This is a lot of information. Okay, site navigation and hierarchy. Has anyone seen one of these on the left before, by the way? So this is going to relate to all of this. So don't try to be different. I hear a lot of people say how much they want to be different. You know, I want my site to be different. I want it to be fun. I want it to be cool. But here's the thing about being different when it comes to user experience. Nobody knows what you're doing when they get to the page, right? Everyone expects the hamburger menu is over here. The menu is on this side. If I click the logo, I'm going to go home, like to the home page. We prioritize this. You typically find this over here. Leave that stuff intact. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, because that's where everybody knows where to find this stuff. So this is what's called the F pattern, for those of you that are unfamiliar. And it's basically how people use a web page. It's a heat map showing what people click on. They tend to click on things in an F shape. So your top left, and then it fades out as you go to the right, and fades out as you go to the bottom. And then you'll see, of course, too, right above the fold, the page fold, which is the top items that show up on your page. So those are the main things if you want to put priority items. So just make sure that you always have access to the home page, usually through a logo, no matter where you are on your site. You always have access to a menu. You're prioritizing your items, like what you want people to do, what you want people to do, but also what people are coming to your site for. Left to right, top to bottom, that's the F pattern. You usually find about, contacts, terms and conditions towards the right. And don't try to stuff everything on every page. Make it appropriate. Don't try to, put, I'm trying to think of an example of just inappropriate things being on certain pages. If you're on a contact page, like maybe you don't want to put an offer or something, or an ad at the bottom of a contact page. It's a contact page. People want to contact you there. So also make sure you're following Google's hierarchy rules. So this is where the whole thing about, I like to use H3s and H4s because I like the way they look better. You're going to get penalized by Google on that. So you have make sure you have a defined H1 on every page, and that your page structure follows H1, H2, H3, H4. So every header is in succession and is in an order. If you don't like the way a header looks, change the style of it instead, which is also an option. Okay, accessibility. So basically, accessibility is just making your site more accessible for folks that might be deaf or hard of hearing, or might have sight issues, or be blind entirely. This is where some of this stuff is very important and comes into play. Label your file names appropriately. So when you upload, remember that everywhere that file goes, the file name goes along with it. So you don't want like UX395 blah, 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 whatever comes off your phone. You want a file name that if somebody who can't see can download, and a screen reader can read it, and they can be like, oh, that's the file I just downloaded that relates to this, right? It boosts SEO. It also prevents corruption. This is kind of an old school, but it still actually does come in handy from time to time, particularly on uploads. Generally, you want your file names to be less than 26 characters, all lowers. If you want to break up words, use hyphens. And a big one, the only period that you have in your entire file name should be before your extension. Alt tags. Alt tags are for describing an image in detail to somebody who cannot see the image. So if you put like something very generic, like Siena, Italy, that means nothing to a person who can't see. You're going to want to be specific, like the blah, blah, blah castle in a green countryside in the middle of Tuscany with the sun setting. That's what alt tags are for. So it's not an image description in your CMS. It's not a caption for your page. It's actually, when screen readers go through, they will tell somebody who can't see that image what is in that image. And when appropriate, you can use keywords in the alt tag, right? Just don't stuff it. If you just have decorative images, don't worry about the alt tags. Screen readers go through that also, and it's sort of useless information to the person on the receiving end. Color contrast and font sizes. Use a checker for the combination. And I actually have provided one. Eric, if you could drop that in the chat. So you want to make sure there's sufficient color contrast between your elements. In other words, that people who don't have great sight are still able to make out contrast. Your contrast decreases as your font sizes decrease. So just because one color combination works doesn't mean if you reduce the font size that it will still work. But I put a handy dandy, my favorite, it's free. You can basically put 2 hex codes and it tells you, yep, these are sufficient color contrast. It tells you different levels. And then it tells you at this font size, whether it's approved or not. And this is where the WCAG compliance comes into play. Do not embed text within images and save out a JPEG. This is another thing that screen readers cannot read. Text boxes placed in code on top of images are okay. I'm hoping the difference there makes sense. And actually, I should also mention too, WCAG or standard accessibility, you can like grade from, you want to reach this level of compliance versus this level of compliance. 508, and I'll have these links for you guys later as well. 508 is basically the government version of WCAG. So if you work for the state or federal government, they're all trying to reach 508 compliance specifically for these folks. So here we go, everybody. This is the resources. I'm going to give you a moment to screenshot this. So these are all the sites that we went through and talked about in full, so that if you want to refer back to them, you can just screenshot this. Give everybody a minute. And I'm warning you up front, the WCAG standards of 508 compliance is real dry. But if you're sort of a nerd like I am, you know, you might find some kind of cool stuff in there. I think the general population though is probably like, yeah. Okay, everyone got it screenshotted? Excellent. So just remember through all of this, and we covered a lot of information that's very in-depth, the alternative to good design is always bad design, y'all. There's no such thing as no design, whether you want there to be or not. So either having a good experience or a bad experience. Bad experiences aren't coming back. And let's be friends. So provided earlier was my blog site. So if you subscribe to my blog newsletter and you've stuck around through this whole thing with all this crazy information, you can get up to $100 off your next hotel stay. That's an automatic coupon that you will receive. And you can subscribe to it via pop-up which we just talked about, or on the right-hand sidebar. If you scroll down, you will find my subscription there. Additionally, if you would like a website audit done on your own website by me, I'm currently offering $50 off when you book in the next 2 weeks. And there is my Calendly link. And what that consists of is I will do 1 hour of a consultation on my own, put together some notes for you, and then I will meet with you for 1 hour as well. And the cost for those 2 hours will end up being $150, just a one-time fee. So, and you can follow me at Global Debauchery on pretty much everything. Twitter is just cut off. So let's jump into questions, shall we?
We shall.
I know it's a lot of information, you guys. It's
a lot of information, but I really appreciate you giving it to us and sort of breaking it down in the way that you did. We definitely have questions, and I would say the overarching theme to the questions seems like almost everyone that's asking the questions, if not everyone, has a web page already, and they're wondering basically, do they have to redo everything, or are there ways to go in and like optimize afterward?
So the one thing I would start doing immediately is probably optimizing your images. I think that's the biggest thing that most people do, unless you have, you know, I think that's probably the biggest, is start doing that immediately today and gradually go back and optimize your images. And it could just be the case that maybe you just pull old content that you'd be pulling anyways entirely. But that being said, there are lots of these other things. Let me flip back here. So there are lots of things, and going back to page speed insights, that you can do right off the bat. And a lot of this is easy stuff. This is like getting rid of your plugins, like your excess plugins, removing some animations, some JavaScript. This is also, what was my, where did it go? Oh yeah, and your ads and pop-ups. Those are things that you can do right away. The making sure you have a secure HTTP is also something that you can do right away. And on the resources page, there's a link that breaks it out really easy in an infographic that tells you how to do this, like in just a couple of clicks. A lot of times, if you search that, it goes way in depth on the developer end and coder speak, and it's not very friendly lingo, I feel like. But yes, images are usually the biggest thing that is dragging people's sites down without them knowing it. So I would just start working, and maybe just, it's almost like incorporating SEO. Like I used to have a hobby blog, and having to go back and incorporate SEO into all the old posts. It is that kind of a project. So worth an outsource maybe.
So am I clear in saying that you are having to re-upload these, like rename, re-upload the images at different sizes? It's not like some sort of plugin you could get that could make all your images smaller or better optimized.
Not that I'm aware. Like those programs are like Lightroom and Photoshop. And a lot of times if you upload an original image and have an auto sizer and an auto compressor, that's where you start getting those pixels, because what it's done is it's taken a very large, high quality image and it's compressed it so far down and so hard that it starts creating those artifacts on your images. And so it actually has an unintended effect. People think it's pixelated, not high quality enough, but it's actually the amount of compression that's happening that's causing that effect. So it's best to start out with a mid-size image that's appropriately sized, and then to compress from there. There could be plugins that I don't know about. I wish that was the case, but I have a feeling probably not. Also, another plugin. One thing too that you can do right away is your alt tags, though, right? And all your images that already exist, is go through and swap out your alt tags. And some CMSs, I don't think I was going to talk about the file names, but I don't think that's the case either, that you can just switch the file names in there.
Yeah. We actually just did this. We're launching a new TNN website, and I uploaded them all wrong, and so I had to re-upload all the images.
Well, I used to have to be in charge of uploading all the images to like massive, like 5,000 page websites and having them all sized appropriately. So I will say, if you have developers, like if you have a WordPress.org and you have developers on your team who do things like that for you, sometimes they're very helpful in your first paint, as they call it, because they can put what they call a media query type of code. And what it does is it triggers, it basically, as soon as somebody goes to your site, it tells your code what kind of device is loading, and it only loads the one image instead of sizing it. It loads like a size appropriate image. The downside of that is you actually have to upload all 3 sizes. So yeah.
Okay, we have some questions, so I want to just start firing them away because we only have a few minutes. But James is asking for images. Is it worth using an SVP image that loads remotely?
An SVP image that loads remotely. I might need more like background information on that.
All right, we'll skip that one for now.
I'll actually write it down and circle
Sure.
back.
I have it written down, so don't worry about that. But
Oh.
Farha is asking, do you recommend using a WordPress AMP plugin and moving to AMP pages or trying to optimize existing mobile pages?
AMP is really the easy way to do it. The reason I don't love AMP is because it takes out sort of all of the design elements of your, like it really just strips it down to the bare minimum. It makes it almost all text. So while it is effective in getting that, hitting those vitals that Google wants you to, it's not really a pretty mobile experience, if that makes sense. So, I mean, you can actually just click, at least in WordPress, you can actually just click AMP and then save it and then go see what it looks like on your phone. And then you can just unclick it as well. But that's actually one of the reasons my first paint on my blog is not excellent, is because I'm a trained designer and things have to be pretty. So like my first paint could be a lot faster than it is. So just as an example.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's good to know, is like, you don't have to be perfect, right? You don't have to be the fastest, but it's just better to like improve some things, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really goes back to, if you're neck and neck with somebody, if you have a slightly better page experience than them, then you will outrank them, like in terms of UX. But all of this stuff is very in depth. Like any little moves that you can make, you'll see a slight difference, and it will be the difference between you and that other person that you're neck and neck with. I don't know of anybody. I mean, just an example, that's one of the reasons I threw Matt's up there, is not to pick on him, but to basically be like, look, these vitals get flagged on a site as big as this with, you know, as much support as this.
And we have SEO consultants constantly, so don't feel bad. I think John just wrote a comment saying that what kills him is that he's heard all of this before and he hasn't implemented it yet. So it's like, I think we're all in that boat. Okay, question about royalty-free images from like Unsplash or Canva or something like that. Are those already compressed since they're coming from the internet, or?
No, they're not. They are high-res images, so you can use them for print. So you do need to reduce those for digital. That's where you want to make sure they are probably at a max 1200 pixels or max height or width, max 1200 pixels. But if you really want to do it correctly, like look on your specific template, at a max 96 DPI. And that's also where you want to check the kilobyte size. So at 1200, at 96, you're gonna want to go below like 250 kilobytes at most. I mean, 150 would be best, but that's also where you reduce the quality. So when you go to save your JPEG and it gives you like 1 through 12 and you're saving like at a 12, you can reduce that and there will be no difference between the two to the naked eye.
Okay, wonderful. And then Brittany's asking, can you change a file name after it's been uploaded?
I don't think you can. And here's why. Like, I think you can within your site, but part of it is that once you upload that file and you're directing code to it, that is the file name that your site recognizes. And I think you can kind of change the title, but basically when it comes back on your page and if somebody like pulls the image off your page, it's going to have that original file name on it.
Okay. Can you recommend a resource for like a step-by-step walkthrough of making sure everything stacks for mobile, or honestly, any part of this SEO training?
A step-by-step. Well, I think the one thing is that if you have a responsive template, Or if you have, for example, those stackable elements, like how everything are in little blocks, you will have a responsive site. There's not a step-by-step anything that you have to do. It's something that if you just have a .com, that will happen automatically, but it is based on the template that you have or that you select, at least in WordPress. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Like all the CMSs have updated specifically to accommodate mobile first, but if you have an old site like mine, you're going to have old page elements that you need to go through and update with these stackable elements, these reusable snippets and widgets.
Okay. We have some questions about the H1, H2, H3, H4 headings. So can you just go over that again and what you mean by changing the style of the heading if you don't like the way it looks?
So a lot of times when you have templates, just pre-popped templates through these CMS systems, so it automatically assigns your level 1 header, your level 2, like what those look like. And a lot of people, when they're creating their pages, think, oh, for my page, H2 just looks too big, and so I'm going to use an H3. Or they have an H6 set up as like bold text that's italicized. So what they end up doing to make their page look good is they'll have an H1, which should be a requirement. Every page needs to start with an H1. They'll go H1, H3, H6, right? Because they like the way it looks. However, Google needs to recognize these as headers. They actually feed back into the content that Google's reading and rewarding or not rewarding, if that makes sense. So if you skip a whole bunch of headers, that doesn't make sense to Google and it's going to penalize you. So if you don't like the look of your H2, you can actually go in and change what your H2s look like. If that makes sense.
And where do you find that?
So it's going to, you can do it in WordPress. It might be on the appearance menu where you can do that.
Cool.
And if you have like a .org instead, then you can just have the developer do it on the back end and change it up.
Cool, cool, cool. I'm definitely guilty of that.
Yeah, a lot of people. Well, that was why I was on the virtual finger down, is because I know a lot of people do it.
We have Tanya asking, I think lots of people have pop-ups for their newsletter subscriptions. So is that one advisable? You're just talking about pop-up ads, right?
It's pop-ups of any kind, but here's the caveat. It's really about using them thoughtfully, right? So if you have a pop-up for, like I have one for my newsletter as well, but people can still access the rest of my site on mobile, like on a phone, like scrolling around. You just want to make sure that whatever pop-ups you have, there's not too many of them because it adds to the job, like all the code, which adds to your load time, right? But you also want to make sure that if you have ad pop-ups or if you have pop-ups for your newsletter installed on your site, that people can actually like click around and actually still get to what they need to. Sometimes pop-ups are so big, you can't access the site anymore. So that's really is just to minimize the number of ads and to make sure that your pop-ups function like on a mobile device.
Like test it and see if you like being on the website.
Yeah, I mean, well, we've all been there and we've all been like, ugh. So like, make sure you're not that person that's serving up that kind of content. Also, check on other people's phones too, that have different types of phones, different sizes. Check on your tablet,
Great. So for somebody that's just starting their website or that hasn't started their website yet, do you recommend WordPress or a different website creation tool? Brie is asking.
I personally recommend WordPress. I use .com, the business version of it. It's more expensive than self-hosting, but what I do get out of it is I get like top-notch customer service. Like I can just chat them anytime and somebody gets a hold of me. I don't have to reach out to a coder, understand what's going on, pay for every instance. So I think at the end of the day, it sort of levels out in terms of cost. And I don't have to worry about self-hosting. That just all goes through them. They do all of the updates. So for me, that's why I'm on a .com. Most people are using WordPress.org, where you still get all of the content management system features, but there's a whole backend that's uploaded and hosted through another site. And a lot of, some people hire coders and developers to manage that the way they want it to be managed. I don't think most people do. So I do recommend that. And I know that some folks are moving away from Squarespace. I think Squarespace is a lot more user-friendly, but they're moving away from it because I was just having this conversation yesterday. Can't remember the reason why. It might be some of its integrations.
I see. We have a follow-up from James. He meant for images, is it worth using the SVG images that load remotely?
Okay, that's what I, when you said SVP, I was like, they did just come out with a bunch of new image types. So maybe SVGs, I honestly, so unless you have animation applied to your SVG, I would just use pings with transparency. SVGs are really big file sizes, even like the little ones compared to a ping, which is a graphic equivalent.
Is a ping a PNG?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, a PNG. So, but like they function graphically the same way, but for the fact that SVGs are sort of outlined and made to apply JavaScript to and made to animate. So if you don't have anything like that happening that's crucial to your site, I would just use a ping with a PNG with transparencies.
interesting. Okay, Lynn is asking, is there a program she can use that's easy to change her image sizes that you recommend?
I would actually just do Lightroom, to be honest. You can do it when you go to export, you can have a custom setting there and you can change right there your dimensions, the quality, how you want it to export. You can even change a file title. So if you have a whole bunch of files going out from one place, you can change the prefix on it so you don't have to save it, do it all individually on your desktop afterwards. And to be honest, just as somebody who's like formally educated in design, I don't trust the like freebies online. Like that might just be me. I just have misgivings or hesitations about ensuring the actual level of quality from those kinds of converters.
Spoken like a true designer.
Yeah.
And then Tracy's asking, is hosting a significant part of performance? Because she's on Bluehost right now and has thought about moving to a faster hosting company.
I think I've heard good things about Bluehost. I've heard good things about Big Scoots. I don't think it's about who you're hosting with necessarily. I mean, if you have a big name like Bluehost, Big Scoots, GoDaddy, WordPress, I think all of those are pretty reliable. The speed at which sites are pulling up is more likely due to your, like what you're putting into your site, I think, than on them, unless they have like a major cloud crash or something crazy. But most of those big name sites, like their whole business is keeping people's sites up and running. So I think if you're experiencing slower load time performance, like it's more likely due to what you're uploading to your site. I hope that makes sense.
Sure does. That sure does make sense. That was it for now. And so I would just love to drop really quickly all the links again so that you can contact Jordan and maybe have her audit your site. And sorry, we have one more question. Is it worth linking Instagram to your site?
I mean, I think so.
Okay.
I mean, I think if you want to drive traffic to your Instagram, like if that's one of your main platforms, like by all means. One thing too that you can do with plugins that I should mention is check the size of the plugin. So for example, there's a ton of different Instagram plugins that you can upload. There's a ton of different Facebook ones, all of that good stuff. So check the sizes. Some of them will be smaller plugin file sizes than others. that saves your code, that saves your load time as well. I mean, I would only put an Instagram carousel up there if that's one of the main social channels you're trying to drive to.
Totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. I know I feel like a little bit of a somber cloud over this talk, but like,
sorry, everyone.
but like only in the way that like you're really teaching us the things that we need to learn, you know?
It's a lot of information.
It's a lot.
But that's why I'm here with my Calendly link there. So I've given you guys the basics. You can sit with that screenshot, sort through the filter or sort through the links and try to hammer through your own stuff. And by all means, if you still have questions, reach out to me. So
yeah,
I'm here for you.
I want to give a little bit of context too. I mean, I've been in this industry now for 10 years. I work with Matt, who, you know, we just saw his site, all his site analytics. And I hope I get to be invited back. Just most definitely. But you know, you guys, we get into this industry not because we're crazy about building websites and we're so passionate about websites. We're so passionate about sharing our knowledge for traveling or whatever our passion is with other people. And the vehicle we're using is a website. So like, we are not web developers. I mean, maybe some people are web developers here, but like, we're not web developers first, right? Like, it's just the vehicle. And so, you know, this is the learning experience. You try something and then you learn how to do it better. And you know what? There's only, you know, a number of people on this call. And so if you do implement just a few things, you'll be better off than a lot of people that weren't here today, and a lot of websites and a lot of blogs, and you'll be, you know, on the right track. So don't get discouraged, just feel empowered, take your one or two things that you learned today and implement them as soon as you can, and you'll see some good results, right?
And remember the easy win. That's 1 out of 6, right?
Exactly.
Getting your site. It's super easy. And that's one check off the box right there.
Perfect. And then maybe next time we'll have you back and you know, we'll all get to keep some more fingers up. All right.